Brett, how we doing?
I'm doing great, Dan. I really appreciate you guys having this. And, I woke up for the first time in about 46 days, a little excited for something. It kind of felt like a game day, getting to hang out with my coaching staff and Leo. And Leo, if you can hear me, brother, I thank you so much for doing this. What you've done for our program, it's been awesome. And for you to reach out and do something like this, I got to tell you, Leo's out of his comfort zone right here. Zoom meeting is not exactly where Leo's sweet spot. So I told Coach Davis he doesn't like texting, so we're going to have to do some test runs on the Zoom meeting. But he's here, and I appreciate it, and I think it's going to be a fun time to get a peek into Furman baseball. And I decided to make a little twist on it. Instead of you hearing me talk for 45 minutes, we can have Coach Davis and of course Leo to kind of dive a little deeper into maybe the pitching side of it and let you know what we're looking to build our program around. And more than anything, let our fans and Furman University get to experience some of Leo. I feel like we hog him, and we're so fortunate that he happens to live near us and spends time with this program. I thought it'd be a really fun event for our friends and family to get to experience him as well.
Thank you, Brett. Caleb Davis, the pitching coach we mentioned, is with us, and it was his relationship with Leo Mazzone that brought him into the program. And I need to point out here that Leo does not help coach the players. He is an advisor. Basically, he helps Brett, Caleb, Taylor Harbin, and Andrew Cox, advises them on how to coach the player. But Leo does not do any coaching himself. He is strictly in an advisory capacity. Caleb, I promised Taylor Harbin that I would mention that he is 4-0 as the interim pitching coach when you have been away from the team. So I got that out of the way. Why don't you tell us about how the relationship with Leo came around, and then we'll get some opening comments from him.
Yeah, absolutely. So back in, I guess it was 2016, summer of 2016, I was still the pitching coach at Anderson University. And, we do a big golf tournament, fundraising golf tournament every year over at Kateche in Hartwell, Georgia. And, our athletic director got us all together, all the coaches get to work it. And most of the time, I end up getting to play it because, there'll always be a team with a player or two out. And that was the same case that year. And I'd found out that Leo was going to be, of course, our celebrity guest. And, I had been asked probably 2 or 3 days before if I could play. And I went to our athletic director and I said, man, listen, I love to play golf. So this should tell you how important this is to me. I'd rather not play, get on a golf cart and hang out with Leo all day and get him whatever he needs. And I showed up, with pen and paper. I think I ended up taking about 4 pages of notes. And, man, we just spent 4 hours on a golf course and talked pitching, talked baseball of all kinds. And we exchanged phone numbers, and, one thing led to another. And my wife and I are hanging out watching the All-Star game a month later at his house, talking more pitching, talking more baseball, and here I am, with the opportunity to talk about the thing I love most with the guy who I believe is probably the greatest that our sport has ever seen at the subject of pitching. And, he's 15 minutes down the road from me. So, it would be very foolish of me to not take advantage of that opportunity. And I did. And, here we are, fast forward, 4 years later. And, I've still got a long ways to go and a lot more information to learn. But Leo's been obviously extremely gracious with his time and his knowledge. And I've only learned a fraction of what he has to offer. So I'm thrilled to death and excited to learn as much as I can moving forward.
Leo Mazzone was voted by ESPN the best assistant coach in the history of Major League Baseball. And Leo, you didn't know what that golf outing was going to get you into 4 years later, did you?
No, I didn't, but it turned out real good. And the reason I was always looking for somebody to hand my information down to, and just like Johnny's saying, he handed his down to me, and I found the right person in Caleb. And then when he came to Furman, and Coach Harker was the head coach, and I got to meet with those guys, had more common sense than any college program or some professional programs I've ever been around. And the reason why I wanted to be associated with them was because of how they coach the game and how they coach the kids and how they treat people and the knowledge and everything. And then Coach Harker he pitched up through AAA, so he has that professional background besides the collegiate background. But the thing that I liked the most was both of those guys have common sense when it comes to coaching baseball. And some of the theories and some of the things I'm hearing now just boggles my mind. So one of the reasons why we hooked up was they believe in the same things I did, really. I mean, we weren't far apart at all. So just a few tips here and there is all I do.
Well, what we're going to do is obviously open it up for questions. If you would send your questions to me in the group chat, you can send them to me privately. For any of our panelists today, we expect that there will be quite a few for Leo Mazzone. But as we're waiting on some questions to come in, I'll go back to head coach Brett Harker. How valuable a tool has having Leo Mazzone as your advisor been for you since you've been the head coach here?
So I'll tell you, it's incredible. And one of the really interesting things, I got drafted out of College of Charleston in 2005. And honestly, I never had a season where I was an all-star or anything like that. And one off season, I came back to Greenville, and through a connection with John Smoltz, a company John Smoltz owned, I ended up hooking up with a guy named Darren Holmes. And Darren Holmes won a World Series with the Yankees and had pitched with the Braves for a while. Had a tremendous influence by Leo. Well, Darren Holmes hooked up with me. He's now the pitching coach at Baltimore. And he taught me so much in one off season and completely changed my delivery and the thought process on everything I was doing on the mound. Well, I ended up taking it into that season, and that was the first time I was ever an all-star as a professional. I shot up to AA and had all my success. So I really started basing everything that I would teach pitching off from that point on stuff that I learned from Darren Holmes. Well, come to find out, all that stuff was really based off of Leo Mazzone. So then you fast forward 15 years later, and me and Leo Mazzone are in stacks having lunch after Caleb introduced us, and we're bouncing stuff off each other, and we're speaking the same exact language. And it's funny how stuff like that works. When Leo was working with Darren, never do you expect that to pass along to me, and then we meet back up. So it's a really cool story how that all took place, and to have him. I think a lot of times our guys don't realize how big of a deal it is to have him around and how special that is. I remember one time, before that dinner we had, fundraising dinner, I'm hanging out with Leo Mazzone and Tom Glavine, and I pinched myself and I said, an 11-year-old Brett Harker would have never believed this. Those are the people I looked up to on TBS, watching them eating dinner in my pajamas as a little kid, and now I'm getting to hang out with these guys. And it's incredibly special. I think it's an incredible resource for our players and really cool for Furman University to have an affiliation with him for sure.
Thank you, Brett. We're starting to get a couple of questions coming in, and probably the one that's on everybody's mind. Leo, Kat wants you to talk about what it was like coaching Maddox, Glavine, and Smoltz, and maybe one or two of your favorite memories from that time frame.
Well, I think that when you coached Maddox, you had to have your X's and O's all together. When you coached Smoltz, you had to have a lighter presentation with what you were trying to get across because he was very, very emotional. And then with Tom Glavine, he was such a strong-minded individual that you could be a little more firm with your presentation as to what points you were trying to get across. But what they did, the consistency of what they did every day, from the time we started our throwing programs in Atlanta prior to spring training, till spring training, April, May, June, July, all the way through the World Series, nothing changed. The routine never changed. You hear now, well, we're going to back this guy down. We're going to back this guy down. We did not back nobody down that entire run. And those guys pitched for 20 years. But the bottom line is their routine stayed the same from February 8th until however far it took us to the World Series. And what it was is that routine consisted of a lot of throwing off of the mound, but not maxing out their effort. And that's one of the keys that Coach Harker and Coach Davies and I have talked about so much, is controlling the effort to stay healthy. That way you can get on the mound more and practice your craft. So that basically was it. Now the stories that go behind it. For example, Glavin in that 1-0 win against Cleveland to win the World Series, he came in the 5th inning and said, "Would somebody score a run? Because they're not." I looked at Bobby Cox and Bobby said, "Did you hear that, Leo?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "We need to score a run, Bobby. Let's go." And things like this, or Maddox wanted me to come out and visit him in the mound because he said he gets lonely out there, and he was so good in his streak that I'd never went out for 4 starts in a row. And he said, "Come on out." He goes, "It's lonely out here. I don't want to talk to Chipper. I don't want to talk to the umpire." He said, "Eddie Perez don't understand what I'm saying. So come on out and pay me a visit." So, those kind of stories. The mound visits were never strategical, pretty much so. If it was strategical, Bobby Cox, the manager, went to the mound. My mound visit was to find out a fatigue factor, a confidence factor, and read the individual. And as you guys know, we all have a degree in psychology, and I never went to college, but making your adjustment on your approaches to each individual and your presentation to them means a lot. So it was just a consistent thing that went on for 10 years.
It's funny you mentioned psychology, Leo, because I talk to Brett all the time, sometimes in our pregame shows, about how he has to be at this level an amateur psychologist. And I think most college head coaches do. I've mentioned it with Clay Hendricks. I've mentioned it with Bob Ritchie. You have to be something of an amateur psychologist. And I think it's interesting. You had 3 very strong-willed guys, you mentioned there, in Maddox, Glavin, and Smoltz, who had 3 vastly different personalities. How long did it take you to figure out those personalities and how you would attack each one of them?
Well, it didn't take long at all, to be honest with you. It doesn't take long with Smoltzy. When we first got together, he was so mechanically obsessed as opposed to just being his natural self. With Glavin, Tom Glavin was very mature when he signed. And with Greg Maddux, he was the smartest individual I've ever met in my life. But they all had one thing in common, guys, when they were pitching. They all told me it's amazing how smart you can be when you have the command of a fastball. And that's what they did, and that's what we practiced on 80% of the time. There was nothing more that we felt to pitching than those 3 great pitchers commanding a fastball and changing speeds. That was our goal. And if we had 2 pitches going, we were going to win. If we had 3 going, we were going to throw a shutout. And if we got narrowed down to 1, we were going to lose. But once again, they all had that common work ethic, but and a great sense of humor. I mean, Glavin didn't laugh as much or be as loud, but he had a great sense of humor. Maddox's sense of humor is off the charts, something we can't even talk about much. And Smoltzy was laughing all the time. So, it was a privilege to be their coach for a long time, but it doesn't take long to get to know somebody. And Bobby Cox told me when I became a major league coach, he said, "I don't care what you do, Leo, get to know your pitchers, spend all your time with the pitchers, and take care of them."
Brett and Caleb, I'll give both of you an opportunity to interject here. He talked about the best pitch is being able to command the fastball. It seems like I've heard that somewhere before in our talks with the Furman pitching staff.
Yeah, so I mean, if you just listen to the names of the pitches, everything is based off a fastball. A changeup, you're changing it off of a fastball. A curveball, curving relative to a fastball that goes straight. If you can't command a fastball in and out, it's all kind of irrelevant. And I'll tell you, Leo just kind of hit on it very briefly, but one of the big things in our program is how much we get off the mound. And it's something that's just not done much anywhere in college baseball. And it's because everybody wants to throw as hard as they can, max effort. And it'd be equivalent to doing a max out on a bench press or a squat. If you do that, you're going to have a soreness factor. You're not going to be able to do that exercise again for 4 or 5 days. And kids nowadays want to get on the mound once a week and throw it as hard as they can, and they physically can't get back on the mound. When our whole theory is we want you to be the most comfortable at 60 feet 6 inches throwing downhill. And the only way to do that is for most of your throwing to be done at 60 feet 6 inches downhill. And in order to do that, Coach Davis and I need to really regulate your effort. And we need to be the guys on top of you to make sure you're not throwing it too hard, where you're going to build up the soreness. Unlike Coach King, his pitchers can sit there. You'll watch. They'll have a softball pitcher that'll, they can pitch 2 or 3 games in one day. It's not the case in baseball. You're not meant to throw overhand as much as we do. And the way that we can combat that is that we back you off with your velocity so that we can get you on the mound more, so that when the guy's up there in the 7th inning and he needs to throw a big time pitch, that's where he's most comfortable. And, Coach Davis says it all the time. If you're a hitter, you're going to hit every single day, but then they ask you to be a pitcher and you get off the mound once a week. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And that's something that we've incorporated into our program. We think it really plays a huge part into our development.
And Caleb, maybe talk about how foreign that is to freshmen who come into your program and how long it takes them to adapt to that philosophy.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this to you a little bit on our interview last week, in the sense that, talking about this year and our excitement for this year and how excited I was, because this was, my 4th full year. And so these seniors that were once freshmen have been through this program for 4 years, and now it's who we are. It's what we do. My first year was tough because you're teaching a whole different philosophy to 15 to 18 guys. And now I can teach it to just 3 to 4. And so, yeah, for freshmen, and I think coming in, we have a pretty good idea the guys are going to pick it up right away. We have a freshman on team right now, Gavin Scott, that, we talked with Leo about before he even got here. We talked with Coach Harker about, and obviously we said, listen, this kid's going to pick it up day one. And then we've got a freshman in Dominic Pianto that's more max effort, that's more, all out every time. And he's going to be somebody that's going to, he's still getting it, and we've got some juniors that are still trying to figure it out. At the end of the day, though, I think our guys are bought into what we're doing because of the success that we've had with some of our guys, and also the background that Leo brings. And, what his guys were able to accomplish with the fastball, makes our guys feel like they can do it. All right, if those guys were able to do it at the biggest level in the game, our guys can do it at our level. And, there's been a lot of different things that Leo has taught us that have helped cue our guys to really be able to locate the fastball. And, Leo will probably talk about it. And, everybody that knows Leo or anything about the Braves pitching staffs, everybody will say, well, man, they pounded the down and away strike. And, that's where we start. Every bullpen we start down and away. And one thing that Leo, brought to me that I never really even thought about before I met Leo was we can work on the down and away strike when we're just playing catch flat-footed in right field. And he has a saying, hey, would you miss on the other side of his body all the time? He says that all the time. Make sure pitchers, really get good extension, miss on the other side of the body. It's from the time you're 5 years old, you're taught to hit your partner in the chest or arm side. And it ends up being a lazy rep. So our guys are working on their fastball command, hitting the down and away strike. 100% of the time they have a baseball in their hand. And the thing that Leo always says is hard away, sneaky quick in. So our guys that have been able to pitch in too. And that's kind of our philosophy. Locate the fastball, work off of it, hard away, sneaky quick in with a ton of efficiency, and have a lot of success.
Leo, you mentioned what you learned from Johnny Sane, and he was in an era when pitchers threw a lot, obviously. By the time you came along as the Braves pitching coach, your philosophy of throwing that much between starts was almost revolutionary because it had been purged from the game. Was it hard to get big league pitchers on board initially with that philosophy?
No, I don't think so. I think what happened was, Johnny Sane came up in a 4-man rotation. And a lot of the years that I pitched in the minor leagues, I was in a 4-man rotation. And I always felt you stayed sharper in a 4. And the baseball world said you stayed healthier in a 5. So when they went to the 5-man rotation, that was to give a pitcher an extra day's rest. And my thought process was, well, I would rather have him get on the mound again. And I did it on my own because Hank Aaron was my boss for 12 years. And he says, there's your pitchers, take care of them. He wasn't telling me how to do it. So I said, you know what, I'm either going to revolutionize this thing or I'm going down to what. And so anyway, all the guys love doing it. They love getting off on the mound and practicing their craft. But the one thing Sane burnt in my brain, and you always remember, more often, less exertion, more often, less exertion. That means you can throw a lot more in between starts. But if you're going down there and airmail it and try to jack it up, then you're not going to be able to. And in doing that, all the pitchers started loving it. And then I started having a reputation of nobody getting any sore arms. So basically, to get to the big leagues when I was coaching, you had to have that type of background where your pitching staffs in the minor leagues were not breaking down. And we did not break down. So then when Bobby Cox took over as the general manager, he said he was going to turn an offensive-oriented organization into a pitching one. Who's going to take care of it? So naturally, I took the lead on that. And there was other pitching coaches that disagreed. They said that our pitchers wouldn't have nothing left in August. And I interrupted the other pitching coaches, and I said, well, what do you do if I have them on the mound that extra day? They said, well, we have flat-footed throwing in the outfield. I said, why don't you explain the difference then to me of flat-footed throwing in the outfield instead of going 60 feet, 6 inches downhill on the mound? They said they'll have a tendency to throw too hard. I said, that's what they pay you for, to regulate the effort. And so then they sat down, and then a couple of the other minor league managers said, Leo, staffs always go to the post when it's their turn. That was always our saying, go to the post when it's your turn, and the rest will take care of itself. So then when Bobby became down to the on the field as a manager, he brought me with him. We incorporated that same program that I've been using in A-ball, AA, and AAA. And we only went 537 starts before we missed one.
That's all. That's all. Leo, David Ellison wants to know how you got into professional baseball. What's that story?
Well, I signed out of high school with the San Francisco Giants. I had a scholarship to West Virginia University, but I didn't want to go to college. And I signed out of high school with the Giants. So the first time my dad put me on a plane in Pittsburgh, and the first time I went away from home was 3,000 miles from Western Maryland, West Virginia, Pennsylvania area, and went up to pitch in the Northwest League. And I ended up pitching 10 years in the minors. And one year when I was 19, I had like 15 wins and 18 complete games. My rookie year, I was 6-6. I was supposed to go to the rookie league, and I made Class A starting rotation. Got to the big league camp with the world champion Oakland A's. Pitched through AAA, pitched in Mexico. And after 10 years, Sid Thrift was the farm director of the Oakland A's. And you'll like this story, guys. He goes up to me and says, in spring training, he goes, Leo, we think you're coaching material. I said, yes, Sid, so do I. I'm thinking about doing that down the road. He goes, Leo, we think you're coaching material. He meant now. So that's when I was told that I wasn't going to get to the big leagues as a pitcher after pitching 10 years, but that I had a real good chance to get there as a coach. So they set me up with my first coaching job or managing job down in Texas, and went from there.
You were on that road already and didn't even realize it.
Yeah, now, not later.
Right. For Coach Brett Harker from Matt wants to know how the staff is handling recruiting during the shutdown that we're in right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it is not ideal. We need to be seeing these arms and seeing these players, but it is what it is, and everybody's in the same situation. So we're doing our Zoom meetings. We're trying to get to know kids and build relationships with them and their family. A large part of what we do is we don't over-recruit, and that is also rare in college baseball. For those of you that don't know, college baseball has a 35-man roster limit. And so when you start seeing these Power 5 schools and stuff committing 18 to 20 kids per class, that some quick math tells you that this doesn't add up, that they're getting rid of a lot of kids every year. And that's just not the way that we do it. We bring in kids, we bring in what we need per year. That usually ends up being about 8 to 10 per class. And when we bring them in, they're going to graduate from Furman. They're going to do that on time. So in order to do that, that means we can't have misses like other schools can. If other schools, a third of their recruits end up being producers and helping them, then they still win. For us, we need every kid to produce for us. And that means we got to know that they're going to work hard. We know that they're talented, but how much work ethic and how much are they coachable to get better? We need to know that their family's in it. What's going up on Paladin porch can be just as impactful onto our program as what's happening on the field. In order to do that, we got to get to know them. So whenever we do a Zoom meeting, I ask that the parents are there. I want my entire coaching staff there. We end up truly getting to know them. And it's funny with this pandemic going on, you end up working even harder to get to know people and conversating with them over Zoom. And we're trying to use it to our advantage like anything else. We take an obstacle and try to use it to our advantage. And hopefully once this all opens up, we can get them on campus. Obviously, the campus sells itself and our facilities and all that. But right now, we want to make sure that we're getting the right people on campus because that's such a big deal in our recruiting scheme.
Caleb, taking this question, by the way, is from Logan. Taking the base of knowledge, access to coaching that's available at Furman, how do you convey that to a recruit and get them to buy into the value of the experience and total value of a Furman education?
Yeah, for us, I think that's actually pretty easy. In a day right now where all guys can do is sit at home and do research and be on computers, or whether it's Zoom or just on our athletic website or our Furman website, I really think that part of it is pretty easy in the sense of selling our degree and what we're able to offer guys from an academic standpoint, and then what we're able to offer guys from an athletic standpoint, specifically pitchers. I think Coach Harbin and myself have been on the road a lot the last 4 years, and I think we've done a really good job with bringing in arms. And you look at some of the guys that we've brought in, for example, this past year, Stone Simmons was our Friday night starter as a true freshman. A guy out of Houston, Texas, that, I don't necessarily know that's as much a pat on our back or a knock on everybody else that didn't give him more opportunity, but the kid's as good as I think we're ever going to coach. And a lot of that has to do, again, back credit to Leo in the sense of, Leo's done so much for me as a coach, not just on how to teach the guys we have now, but how to look at high school kids and say, this kid can have success because he does this, this, and this. And so our recruiting from a pitching side of things has only gotten better and will only continue to get better. And as Coach Harker said, with the pandemic going on and stay at home and our campus being closed and kids not having an opportunity to get on campus, it kind of forces our hand a little bit more to get to know them even more, which I think will help us in the end, because there aren't many campuses that are going to go toe-to-toe with ours across the country. And I don't really care where you are, East Coast to West Coast, North, South, our campus stacks up with any of them. So if we can get these guys on campus, after this time is over, with the knowledge that they're going to know and the relationship that we're going to have with them before they get here, I think this really helps us. Where some places it may hurt, I think this really helps, because our degree is it's really tough to compete with what we're able to offer from a degree standpoint. And then, especially if you're a pitcher, I mean, you talk about, Coach Harker mentioned our recruiting sizes and not over recruiting and throwing out some numbers. I mean, we really only bring in about 3 to 5 arms in a class. So if I'm talking to you, that means we have a ton of interest in you, because you're one of 3, one of 4, one of 5. We tell guys all the time, we don't bring in any plan Bs or plan Cs or plan Ds. We bring in all plan As. Freshmen ask a lot about playing time, or high school recruits ask a lot about, well, how often do your freshmen play? And it's just very simple for us. If you don't play, we're not any good. And it's that simple. So that sends a message right away that we expect our guys to play when they get on campus. So all that kind of stuff helps, just because, we back ourselves intentionally up against a wall with our incoming classes, because we want those guys to come here. We want the top of the line talent. We want to bring them in. We want to develop them. And from a pitching side of things, when we're able to recruit and bring in 3 to 4 guys, and by the way, the reason we're able to do that, and the biggest thing that attracted me to Leo, aside from all his stuff, is, like he said, that big streak of his guys being able to go that many starts without injury. That's the biggest thing for me. My first 5 years of coaching, man, it felt like guys were getting hurt left and right, and I didn't know what to do. And ever since I came on with Leo and he's mentored me and coached me, our guys just stay healthy. And that's a big thing to high school parents. They think that's a huge deal. When you're talking to, a set of parents about their 16-year-old son, and the first thing you bring out of your mouth is, our number one goal is arm health, they're pumped. And so all that stuff kind of ties into the way that we recruit. And so really this time and getting a chance to sit on these Zoom calls with parents and their son, and for an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, and just answer questions and talk and give information. we've done this at 10 o'clock in the morning with some, because parents are working from home. We just have more opportunity to develop relationship, not only with the kid, but with their parents as well.
Before we move on to some more questions, we have a poll that Ty Osborne is going to put up. And I believe the question is, which of Leo's Cy Young Award winners would you choose to pitch one game that you had to win rather? Tom Glavine, Greg Maddux, or John Smoltz? We will get the results of that poll at the end of the Zoom meeting, and maybe even ask Leo to answer that question a little bit later on. Leo, Patrick wants to know how you handle the emotions of a struggling pitcher. He said it seems to be relatable to handling a goalie or a golfer or even a tennis player. How do you handle those emotions?
Well, I think number one that, I always felt that you pushed harder when you were going good. When you're going good, you can push a guy harder and try to get him even better. When they're not going well, they need your support. And so therefore, it's not the time to holler and carry on or start raising Cain or this or that. What you're trying to do is figure out a problem. And the kid's already upset. You can relate this to high school, college, professional guys. I had to go through it with Mike Hampton, a left-handed pitcher who was miserable and lost all his confidence because of getting beat up in Colorado when he was a great pitcher with the Mets, with the New York Mets. And so therefore, your approach has to be one of support. And figure out the problem. I mean, it could be mental, it could be a physical thing, but whatever it is, I tried to make it a very small adjustment, whether it was mental and downplay it. Another thing that I learned was, say a guy's having control trouble, and the last thing you would want to do when you go to the mound is say, look, you got to throw strikes. He's going to look at you and go, you know what, And so what I was taught by some wise men in the game was that you steered away from the problem. You went to another area, and all of a sudden the pitcher forgot about what the original problem was, or you had or I would make up something a lot of times. I had one pitcher that was struggling with a changeup, and I said, oh my golly, that's my fault. I said, I didn't see your little finger. It's too high on the ball, and that changeup's coming out of the side of your hand. So he looked at the grip and he did it through the change up on the next pitch, and it worked like a charm. He says, there it is, Leo. I said, yep, you got it. And you know what? That finger was in the same place. So it gets back to being a psychologist, and it gets back to giving somebody support and help when they need it. I've seen a lot of colleges, and I ain't going to name them, mention who they are, where I've been told that once a kid's going good, it's rah, rah, rah. They're talking to you, hello, pat on the back. But when they're going bad, they flip you out to the bullpen or don't talk to you anymore.
So Leo, I guess it just kind of confirms some of those great scenes that we saw in the movie Bull Durham, where they go out to the mound and they're talking about anything but baseball with Nuke LaLoosh. That there's a modicum of truth to that sometimes. Anything to get the guy's mind off of the struggles that are happening.
Well, yeah, it is. I mean that's a little bit dramatized, as far as Durham. But I'll tell you what, it's one of the closest movies I've ever seen to real life in the minor leagues.
Brett, let me see who asked the question here before I lose it. Tyler wants to know if you can give us any updates on the fifth-year eligibility for the seniors and what that may look like for the Furman roster. Are you even in a position to talk about that right now?
Yeah, so it appears as though they're going to give guys that fifth year back. That doesn't fix everything, and I understand why they did it, and the intent behind it is right. Of course, for every situation, it's going to mean something different. We bring in our guys to graduate them and graduate them on time. So it was definitely not a fix-all for Furman's 11 seniors. We are going to bring 4 of them back. 3 of them are just going to slow down graduation by 1 class. 1 of them is actually going to graduate and just take post-grad classes. But without having many opportunities for grad school at Furman, it's not an easy transition for Furman athletes in particular. And we say that in a very proud way. We want our guys to graduate and graduate on time. So, guys are seeking opportunities elsewhere. Of course, two of our standout seniors, John Michael Bertrand, had a fifth year before this happened, and he was going to play at Notre Dame and go to grad school at Notre Dame. That was set up long before this all happened. And then David Webble is going to go play at Creighton next year. And that was set up before this happened as well. And we'll see that occasionally where, maybe their freshman year, maybe there was an injury or something and they got a year back. And with our limited grad school, our guys end up going and playing. So you're going to see some of our guys, obviously more guys are in the transfer portal than normal, and that's not a negative thing. That means that they graduated and they did their job at Furman, and I'm happy to make phone calls for them and try to get them more opportunities. And then a lot of our guys are just going on to the real world. They have jobs set up. They have amazing opportunities, and this is kind of the end of the road for baseball. It has kind of turned into the Wild West, though. It's with all these transfers, and my phone is constantly blowing up, and my inbox is constantly blowing up on people looking to transfer, and it's gotten a little crazy in college baseball. And it's with the 35-man roster. What does that mean? Because your seniors that are coming back don't add to that 35-man. So if you have 7 seniors coming back and you had a full 35-man team coming in, you could go up against a team that's got 42 guys next year or 45 guys next year. So at least for 1 year, college baseball is going to be absolutely insane. I think it's going to start tearing down after that. But I think next year is going to be a very interesting year for college baseball.
Leo, the inimitable Ken Pettis wants to know what Major League Baseball hitters would hit if they knew what was coming from the mound.
Well, there's a lot of guys that wanted to know what was coming and a lot of guys that didn't. I know David Justice did not want to know what was coming, and I think that the greatest hitter I've ever seen is Barry Bonds. There's no question about it, because he could read the spin out of a pitcher's hand earlier than anybody in the history of the game besides Ted Williams. So some guys like it, some guys don't. Now, what happened with the scandal was too much technology involved. There's times when you can try to give location from second base, or you try to see the rhythm of a coach at third and see if he changes his rhythm when there's something on. And there's stuff like that that's going on in the game for a long time. We knew that when we played in the World Series in Minnesota, that when we were hitting, the flags were blowing in, and when the Twins were hitting, the flags were straight down. We couldn't air condition in the Metrodome, but and then you laugh about it, and that's part of what the game was all about. But this has taken it to a whole nother level, and I'm glad that they took care of it. I don't think there should be any more punishments on it. When rules are in place, it's like the steroid era. There was no rules in place. Now there's rules in place. Okay, for the technology, there was no rules in place. Now there's rules in place, and that's how you take care of stuff like that. But if there's no rules in place, it's game on. I never forget. We were playing the Giants in the playoffs, and Barry Bonds got on first base off of Maddox and stole second after Bonds got a base hit. And Maddox goes to me, he goes, "Well, Leo," he said, "I guess all bets are off." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "What was the deal?" He goes, "If I walk him," he said, "he was stealing second." He said, "But if I pitched to him, he wouldn't run." He said, "But this is the playoffs." He said, "He ran after I pitched to him and he got a base hit." He said, "I guess all bets are off."
Leo, I'll start this next question with you and then get both Brett and Caleb to hop on it as well. But Dan wants to know, another Dan, what's your biggest frustration with the state of youth/travel baseball today?
Well, I think the biggest thing is and I have to look at it from a pitcher's point of view, is I am sick of the term velocity. And I'm sick of hearing about kids being told that they're not going to make a ball club unless they hit a certain number on a radar gun. So what's the individual going to do? He's going to try to jack it up and try to hit that number on the radar gun, which raises the risk of arm injury And I was up in New York with Tommy John himself and Dr. Ahmad from the Yankees. 52% of Tommy Johns are now 19 years of age and under. Now, there's nothing wrong with playing a lot of throwing a baseball year round, but competitive baseball has to be, you got to be real careful how long you go when you're just developing your arm as a youngster. There's nothing wrong with throwing it year round, but there's something wrong with being competitive year round. You should play other sports, not just one sport. When that sport's over, you go to the next one and on and on. But the term velocity is something that I can't stand. And I can tell all you people out there right now, when you watch a Major League Baseball game, whatever number they say is on that velocity number, subtract 5. If somebody says they're throwing 95, they're throwing 90. If it's and just subtract 5 because they do not time it coming across home plate anymore. They time it coming out of the pitcher's hand. So subtract 5. But this velocity thing, throwing as hard as you can, it's just like Coach Harker, Coach Davis said, all these kids are blowing out. And they blow out in the big leagues too. You know why? We based all our programs, and Furman does too, on throwing more often with less exertion. The teams that blow out and the pitchers that blow out, they throw less often, which is with as much exertion as you possibly can have. So the big beef I got about travel baseball is not with the kids, it's with coaches and what they teach these kids. Some of them should not be coaching.
Dan, it took you 42 minutes, but you got Leo riled up right now.
I was just going to say, I wish he'd quit holding back and tell us how he really feels.
I'm starting to rock.
And I'm watching the entire Furman coaching staff is on the same line.
I knew it. I knew that it was coming.
And they're all nodding their heads. If this were a church service, Brett would be ready to pass the plate right now.
Dan, I would say one of my biggest knocks, and you have to understand, I think there's a lot of positives that come out of travel baseball. In particular, I mean, we're lucky. It's in Atlanta, Georgia. We take a short trip down there, and we can see several players instead of driving all over the country, and maybe a kid gets 1 or 2 at-bats or a pitcher has a bad outing and you just drove for 8 hours to do it. Well, now we drive 30 minutes to the next field and can see another arm. So there's a ton of benefits to it. I would say my biggest knock on it, and I think all coaches across all sports would tell you, is that it's the lack of knowing how to actually win the game instead of playing in a showcase setting. So everything is showcase, showcase, showcase. And, when it was so built around high school baseball or Legion ball, you were playing for your high school, you were playing for your region, and you were trying to win a championship. Well, in order to win championships, you got to know the game. You got to know how to hit cuts and relays. You got to know how to bunt and get guys over. You got to know how to hit and run. It's not just how hard can you throw, how far can you hit it. And those things, you get to college and it's back to you need to win and whatever it takes. And, I tell people all the time, do I love home runs? Yep. Do I love pitchers that throw hard? Yep. Do I love hitting runs? Yes. Do I love bunting? If that's what we need to do. And the bottom line is you got to do what your team needs to do to win. And from year to year, that might change. If you're a team that doesn't have as much power and you need to move guys station to station, you got to be better at bunting. You got to be better at hit and run. And these are things that are just really not taught as much in travel ball. Are they taught? Of course they are. But are they taught a lot as a whole? Probably not as much as they were, 10, 15 years ago. And that will be one of my biggest gripes is teaching kids how to win. It's not all about them. Sometimes sacrificing yourself for the team is better. And I will tell you, people have different philosophies. Don't ever give up an out. Why you got 27 outs? Why are you giving one up? You look across college baseball and you pull up your top 25 and you pull up their sacrifice bunts, their sacrifice flies. They're doing whatever it takes to win. And typically, I was on the 2 winningest SoCon teams in the history of baseball at College of Charleston 2004 and 2005. We led the nation in sacrifice bunts those 2 years. Does that mean that you have to sacrifice bunt to win? No, but those particular teams, we made it our strong point, and it was whatever it took to win. When sometimes travel baseball makes it to where, what did I do today? How many extra base hits did I have? Which is great. That can help your team win too. But do you know how to do the little things when the competition gets better, when every 90 feet counts?
Caleb Patterson asks, this goes back to the throwing program, wants to know how many times off of the mound a pitcher will get in a week, or maybe even compiling it for a season? Say if he starts on Friday, how many times will he throw off the mound in bullpen sessions between starts?
So
Yeah,
that's going to vary between these two conversations, because our guys pitch once a week. So if they're Friday, they will be pitching again next Friday. With Leo, their guys will be pitching on that 5th day after it. So I think it's kind of interesting to see the difference between the college rotation and the pro rotation with Coach Davis and Coach Mazzone.
We'll start with Caleb, and then we'll let Leo answer from the pro standpoint. Caleb?
Yeah, so with us, all of our starters are going to throw in between starts twice a week. So, and I got this from Leo. So what I would do with any starter is ask them first, how many days off do you want before your start? 1 day or 2. So if, for example, John Michael Bertrand wanted 2 days off. So he would start on Friday. He would throw a pin on Sunday, off on Monday, throw a pin on Tuesday, off Wednesday, Thursday, start Friday. And of course, when I say off, I mean not throwing off the mound. It doesn't mean he's not throwing a baseball. It just means he's not throwing off the mound. And it would have some guys, Rob Hughes would sometimes want 1 day off. So start on Friday, bullpen on Sunday, off Monday, Tuesday, throw bullpen Wednesday, off Thursday, start Friday. So, some of our guys, it would just depend. Do you want, that extra day between your 2 pins, or do you want that extra day before your start? And then with relievers, again, this comes from Leo. We never go more than 2 days without being off the mound. And it doesn't even matter if it's a game day. We have, I'd say 75% of our guys that throw, in a game on a Friday in relief, probably threw a bullpen 3.5 hours before the game ever started. So, our guys are throwing nonstop. And then the amount that a guy is off the mound is going to vary to the individual, especially out of the bullpen. We have one guy, Jordan Beatson. If we let him, he would throw a bullpen every single day. And it's, he would throw 7 bullpens. He wants to throw all the time. And, to be completely honest with you, there's times we've let him throw 4, 5, heck, sometimes 6. But, a bullpen, I think a lot of times people think, well, this is 35, 40 pitches. We don't, one of Jordan Beatson's bullpen may last 12 pitches. He just wants to get on the mound, spin the fastball both sides of the plate, flip the breaking ball in there, feel good about it, go sit in the dugout, And there may be times where he throws a little more extensive bullpen and, we're still dialing back his effort, but he gets his work in. So, that's going to vary from all of our relievers. But when it comes to a starter, those guys are always going to throw twice in between their starts. It's just a matter of what the timing looks like depending on when they want that additional day.
So, Leo, with your big league rotations pitching every 5th day, how often were your starters on the mound between starts?
We were on the mound twice in between starts. The 2 middle days, they would pitch, then take a day off, then side, off and pitch. And, it was a nice routine. A lot of times Glavin wanted to throw 2 sessions, but the second session, he wanted to do it the day before he was getting ready to start. But they all got on the mound a couple of times, And what we did, though, was we had, once again, that we regulated the effort. And that's basically what Caleb's doing, is the same thing. And I love the idea about the relievers because, I had one baseball executive tell me one time I was working with a reliever down in the bullpen before the game. And he said, what do you do? Were you working with so-and-so down in the bullpen? I said, yeah. He goes, well, he might get in the game tonight. I said, well, that's what we're preparing him for. So he does get in the game. Because when does a reliever ever get the same amount of attention from his pitching coach? They never do, if you think about it, over a full year, And you have to you have to give your number 11 guy the same amount of attention as you give your number 1 guy. And what they're doing too is, if you get them on the mound a couple times in between, and you give the pitcher the option, and the way the college game is set up, I think they've set it up they're accomplishing the same thing. Guys you encourage guys to get on the mound. You don't say, oh no, don't throw today. There's only so many bullets. That's a bunch of crap. There are plenty of bullets. Guys pitch for years, years and years and years without breaking down. Well, they seem to be doing something right. But today's game is, if you're not careful, especially in the pitching end of it, well, Coach Harker says too, it's how hard you can throw it, how far you can hit it. And to me, that's where baseball's making a huge mistake, especially with youth baseball. and especially with pitchers' arms graduating from high school. They're 17 and 18. They got an elbow of a 30-year-old.
We've got about 8 or 9 minutes left, so we're going to try to wrap it up at 1 o'clock. And we really appreciate Leo, along with Brett and Caleb, and all of you who have joined us here on this Furman Lunch and Learn today. By the way, the poll winner was Greg Maddox, of the big 3 Cy Young Award winners that Leo coached. Who would you want to pitch one game you had to win? Our people online here chose Greg Maddox. All right, Leo, I'm putting you on the spot.
Well, I think the game 7s and all the big games that we had in the postseason, John Smoltz's numbers were absolutely outstanding. He was the biggest big game pitcher. That doesn't mean now that Maddox and Glavin weren't good. I mean, Maddox, if you just watched on TV recently, they put a game up against when he beat Cleveland 3-2 in Game 1 of the World Series, one of the greatest pitching games I've ever seen. Glavin beats Cleveland 1-0. Smoltzy's numbers in postseason are absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, and that's who I voted for, by the way. You can take that for what it's worth. Brett, Tom wants to know how Furman pitchers are working out during the campus shutdown.
You know, we're doing as much as we can, just like anybody else. This is a really, really strange time for coaches, because even if you send home workouts, it's all going to depend on what they have available. We have guys getting very, very creative. The good news is a set of bands to do arm care is $20, and they're still shipping those out, so we can still make sure that we're getting our arm care in. And of course, the Bernardis are doing a great job of sending out different workouts and making sure that they're able to do body weight stuff. As far as throwing, you know, we said when we broke, I said, take your equipment, because at that point our season was not canceled, it was postponed. We said, take your equipment and do as much as you can. That might be, you know, playing catch at your local high school until you can't anymore. That might be playing catch in the backyard with your dad, or that might be setting up a tarp and throwing into it. Society and the government will tell us what we can and can't do. And, you know, our guys are spread out all over the country, and different places are obviously a lot more tight about their regulations than others are. So some guys are still able to get work in, and some guys, you know, are having a hard time even leaving their houses. And, you know, for a while we were really getting them prepared for summer baseball and trying to make sure we get our innings in there. And it seems like every time I get on Twitter, another league has just canceled. The Cape Cod League, which is our famous, you know, the best league in college baseball, just canceled. And that's a really, really big deal. I think that's going to basically be the first of all of them to come. So it's going to be tricky, you know, and our big thing is we need our guys to play. So we need our freshmen to not be freshmen next year, even though they only got in 16, 17 games. We need them to develop, and that means it's going to put that much more pressure on us developing them in the fall.
I want to do something a little off script here. I want to unmute Taylor Harbin for just a moment. We've been talking pitching this entire time, so he probably wants a little bit of time for rebuttal. And Taylor, we actually got a question from Brandon Elmy, former Paladin, who's wanting to know if we talked anything about hitting an approach yet, which we haven't. So I'm going to let you do that here for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously from our end, with Coach Cox and I, from the hitting side of it, our biggest thing has definitely been the approach side and the mental aspect of it. You know, Coach Harker talked a lot about with the summer ball about guys coming in and seeing how far we can hit it, and the home run and the wow factor. And, you know, just teaching some of these guys the fundamentals, you know, has been one of the biggest things we've tried to put an emphasis on. But for a lot of young hitters, you know, stuff I had to learn further down the road that if I would have known when I was in high school, you know, might have helped me out even more, was just, you know, your mental approach to the game, especially when you get in the box, having the confidence in yourself, the confidence in your skill set, because I tell our guys all the time, we watch video and, you know, we talk about mechanics and stuff, but if you watch video and you're trying to find a flaw in your swing, you can do it. I mean, if you sit there long enough, you're going to find a problem that you're going to try to fix, where a lot of our guys, mechanics is not the issue. So a lot of the video stuff we use is more of, pitch selection. What are you swinging at? Are you swinging at balls? Are you swinging at the pitches in your zone that are your strengths? What are you looking for when you're going to the plate? Are you looking for a specific pitch? So getting kids to understand that has been, the biggest thing for us as a offensive unit with Coach Cox and I, because everybody wants to get up there and everybody thinks that they can get a hit every single time. And if they don't, then they've had a bad game. Where, you have to just take it at bat to at bat, know your strengths, know your weaknesses. But the biggest thing is having confidence in yourself to get the job done when you're at the plate. So being able to have those guys understand that when they're 17 and 18-year-olds coming in, it has been a battle. But a lot of our guys have bought into it. We're starting to see them, make that turn and kind of grow up a little bit.
That's great, Taylor. I'm glad that you were available to answer that, because the only thing Brett and Caleb know about hitting is that they can't. So it was nice to have you there. Leo, what kind of hitter were you as a pitcher in the minor leagues?
I was used as a pitch hitter 7 times my first year. I was 1 for 7 pinch hitting my first year in the minor leagues. I could hit. I just couldn't run, and I wasn't very big. I couldn't hit for any power, but I could bunt and put the ball in play.
And I remember listening to the late Joe Nuxall on the Reds broadcast for years, and he always talked about how, a pitcher could go out and throw out a shutout, but if he got a base hit, he was going to talk about that hit more than he did on the mound. How were the Braves pitchers when it came to hitting? Were they that way?
Oh, absolutely. They used to have money bet on who was going to get the most hits, who was going to have the most total bases, stuff like that. And one thing all of them could do, though, man, they could bunt. They were very good bunters, and they just weren't an automatic swing and a miss. Except the one guy that they said they feared more than anybody, when they had to get up to the plate and square around and bunt, and it was against Kevin Brown. They said it got a little shaky up there with him out on the mound.
Well, we are right up against the clock. By the way, Taylor, we had Todd said go Devil Dogs. So we're still looking for your statue there in Travelers Rest. I want to thank Brett Harker, Caleb Davis, Leo Mazzone for joining us for this Lunch and Learn. Brett, you want the final word here?
No, we just, we appreciate you guys joining, helping us build our brand. And we think that, our student athletes, there's many coaches out there, Furman coaches, I see your faces, you're doing the same thing. And I think we have an incredible community. Our student athletes do it the right way. Our university does it the right way. And I think this is a great way to help spread our brand, get to know our program a little bit better. And in this particular case, you guys just get to enjoy Leo like we do. What a great addition to our Furman family. Leo, I thank you so much, brother. You're officially a Zoom expert now. You can text me back. If you can Zoom, you can text now, Leo. So,
hey, I just want you and Caleb to know, before I turn it over to Ty Osborne, that you all were worried about whether he was going to be able to pull this off. He was on and waiting before either of you got here.
I love it.
So Ty Osborne,
he logged on at 9:30 this morning.
That's great. Leo, thank you. Caleb, thank you. Everybody, thank you. Ty, what do we got left to do before we close this out?
That's it. And what an awesome panel. That was incredible. That was really cool. But I do want to really quickly promote our next week's Lunch and Learn. It is going to be Mother's Day themed. So we've got some of our mothers who are head coaches, Jackie Carson from women's basketball, Michelle Young from volleyball, Rachel Witten from women's lacrosse. So really, really excited about that panel and catching up with them next week as well. Tune in at Tuesday at noon, same time, same link.
All right, sounds good. By the way, Dwight Covington said, Leo, you win the background award for what we're all seeing on campus. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you next week for that special Mother's Day Lunch and Learn. Until then, as I sign off the radio every time, God bless you. So long, everybody, and let's go Dens.